They said the legend of the PlayStation 4 was destined to fade quietly. That was the hushed rumor among so many gamers who believed Sony would eventually close the chapter on its colossal hit, leaving us lost in a wave of new technology. Yet here we are, on the brink of an entirely new dawn, with the PlayStation 5 nearing the end of its own generational cycle, and Sony itself has stepped in to say, "Hold on, this story is far from over." Yes, you heard that right. The PlayStation 4 is still fiercely clutching the spotlight, and it is not ready to bow out just yet. Today we are diving headfirst into the swirling world of console wars, marketing strategies, and a fan community that is more alive than ever. In this episode, we will dig into the shocking question of why the PlayStation 4 still wields so much power, what Sony has in store for its future, and how this ties in with the growing whispers around the next possible generation, rumored to be the PlayStation 6. In the coming minutes, we will unravel the most fascinating elements behind Sony's newest announcement that the PlayStation 4 remains a core pillar in the company's ecosystem. We will question how much longer the venerable console can thrive, when many believe the focus should be entirely on the PlayStation 5. And we will explore the games, the business strategies, and the surprising new details that have thrown the spotlight back on a device released in the year 2013. Some people think it is madness to keep this generation going. Others are rejoicing, glad to hear that their beloved console will not be tossed aside. So, buckle in, because we are about to embark on a roller coaster of revelations, controversies, and unexpected twists that you will not want to miss. To begin, let's acknowledge the sheer longevity of the PlayStation 4. When Sony launched it in the year 2013, few could have predicted just how many award-winning titles would land on that platform. From the hauntingly gothic landscapes of Bloodborne to the cinematic splendor of Uncharted 4, A Thief's End, from the web-slinging wonders of Marvel's Spider-Man to the evocative feudal tale of Ghost of Tsushima, the PlayStation 4 gave us some of the era's most defining adventures. But as all console generations do eventually hit that dreaded finish line, many fans were anticipating a gentle wind-down of support by the time the PlayStation 5 took center stage. Especially now, with the industry swirling with speculation about a possible PlayStation 6 lurking on the horizon. Maybe not this year, maybe not next, but the mere mention of a new console is enough to harness the collective speculation of gamers worldwide. Yet, in the face of these swirling theories, here is the moment that has taken so many by surprise. Sony, in a recent briefing, declared that the PlayStation 4 is not only still in the ring, but remains a vital piece of their plans. This is unusual in the fast-paced gaming world. Typically, after the launch of a new console, the older generation starts seeing titles trickle away, with fewer publishers catering to the older systems. Within 2 or 3 years, most gamers shift focus to the shiny new toy. But that is not the story Sony is telling now. They claim that the PlayStation 4 continues to be sustainable because it holds a huge base of active and spending users. When a company as big as Sony sees direct value in older hardware, you better believe there is a strategic reason behind it. Could it be that the PlayStation 5 did not capture the entire audience instantly due to supply constraints and other global factors? Could it be that certain iconic franchises are still bridging generational gaps? Or is there more to the story, like a bold plan to unify multiple generations under one ecosystem, paving the way for all manner of cross-play and extended library support? Let's take a closer look at the financial side of things. According to statements made by Lynn Azar, who serves as Senior Vice President of Finance at PlayStation, the company has deliberately shifted away from the old cyclical model in which each console generation forms a neat box. Newly minted hardware arrives, older hardware is phased out. Historically, that neat approach worked well enough, but the gaming landscape has changed. Now, there are entire rosters of fans who invest in digital libraries, who want continuity, and who appreciate cross-generational experiences. This means the line that once separated older consoles from the new is blurring. The PlayStation 4 is heavily entrenched in homes worldwide, brimming with nostalgic and modern gaming experiences, and Sony is not eager to push that user base aside. Instead, the plan is to harness the synergy of multiple generations at once. So, while the PlayStation 5 caters to the highest spending segment, with fans who are eager to jump into brand new features like ray tracing and lightning-fast load times, the PlayStation 4 remains a popular choice for those who may not be ready to make that leap, or prefer a more budget-friendly option. This synergy reveals a shrewd tactic at work. Sony acknowledges that, as much as the PlayStation 5 is a runaway success, there must be an affordable, widely available gateway into the PlayStation network for more casual or cost-conscious gamers. And while that might sound purely monetary, it also means that more diverse types of gamers can share the same ecosystem. If you have ever wondered how PlayStation retains such a loyal following, part of the reason is its ability to maintain these bridging strategies across generations. What does that mean for the future of the PlayStation 4? How many more years of big releases will we see? To answer that, one must consider the intersecting alliances, the developers and publishers. Because as soon as major third-party publishers decide it is unprofitable to create games that can run on older hardware, that is when the cracks begin. Until then, the PlayStation 4 stands solid, partly because Sony is actively encouraging a multi-generational structure, and partly because user demand is still robust. Of course, some critics argue that clinging to the older generation can slow the pace of innovation. They assert that titles tailored for the PlayStation 4th and 5th must be designed within technical limitations, preventing absolutely groundbreaking experiences that only the newer hardware can handle. They question whether the existence of the PlayStation 4 as an active platform dilutes the appeal of exclusive next-gen experiences on the PlayStation 5. On the other side, supporters respond that the gaming market is not homogeneous. There are plenty of people who only just purchased a PlayStation 4 in the last few years, or who simply do not need the extravagant leaps in hardware. Imagine you are a busy gamer who invests a moderate number of hours per week. You do not crave the top-of-the-line experience, but you still want consistent, high-quality games. This is where the PlayStation 4's continuing appeal becomes quite clear. Sony is betting that if they keep the older generation relevant, they will maintain a larger audience overall. And guess what that audience does? They buy games, they subscribe to services, they talk about upcoming releases, and they remain part of the network that can then be gradually nudged to upgrade. This is precisely how Sony reduces the typical boom and bust cycle that used to dominate console lifespans. Instead of a dramatic spike in interest upon launch and a fairly rapid tail-off for older systems, Sony can ensure relatively stable revenues by letting the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 coexist and flourish together. Then, by the time they finally do bring out the next big leap, perhaps the rumored PlayStation 6, they can do so with a robust network already accustomed to multi-generational fluidity, pushing them to incorporate even more advanced backward compatibility. If you are enjoying this narrative so far, let me take a moment to remind you. If you feel that spark of curiosity growing, do me a small favor and tap that like button or share this story with a fellow gamer. It is a simple gesture, but it tells me you are having as much fun as I am dissecting the secrets of Sony's grand plan. As for the question of how long the PlayStation 4 can keep going, we face an interesting confluence of factors. First, we must watch the major releases. Listen carefully the next time a beloved series announces a brand new sequel. Is it cross-generational, launching on both the PlayStation 4 and 5, or is it restricted to the newer machine alone? The presence of cross-generational titles suggests the older system remains profitable. Second, watch the exclusives. Sony knows that system-exclusive titles drive console sales. Do not forget how The Last of Us Part 2, at the time seen as a pinnacle of visual achievement on the PlayStation 4, came along relatively late in the console's life. And if future exclusives skip the older console entirely, that is the sign that the shift is accelerating. Third, watch the official statements out of Sony. Right now, they have stated their intentions. The PlayStation 4 is still worth supporting, but eventually they may say something else, perhaps acknowledging that certain features cannot be downscaled or that certain visual leaps cannot be achieved on older hardware. In the grand scheme, one cannot ignore that this entire conversation is a microcosm of the gaming industry at large. We are in a climate where technological leaps happen rapidly. Graphics cards, streaming capabilities, higher frame rates, and expansions in digital libraries are overshadowing the constraints of older platforms. Meanwhile, the persistent supply chain issues across the globe, which impacted the availability of the PlayStation 5, might have forced Sony to adopt a more inclusive plan. If you cannot get enough new consoles onto store shelves, it is wise to keep the older generation happy and well-stocked. That way, you do not hemorrhage potential sales. Instead, you keep the momentum going and wait for the moment when upgraded hardware can be produced in stable enough quantity to meet climbing demand. At the same time, loyalty and nostalgia factor in. The gaming world, unlike some industries, is steeped with emotional connections. Many of us have special memories tied to that first moment we booted up Bloodborne on the PlayStation 4, or soared through city streets in Marvel's Spider-Man. The idea that these experiences might be left behind is unsettling. Sony, by reassuring us that the PlayStation 4's retirement is not imminent, taps into that sweet spot of brand loyalty. Even if you eventually decide to pick up a PlayStation 5 or the rumored next iteration, you will likely retain your old library, bridging that gap and fostering a sense of continuity. But do not mistake this for a one-sided love story. Sony is also serving its own bottom line, ensuring that it can squeeze every ounce of goodwill and revenue from a console that remains deeply ingrained in millions of households. Do they risk overshadowing the new console by focusing so heavily on the old? Perhaps not. The PlayStation 5 has been a success despite supply issues, and by letting the older console run in parallel, Sony might be effectively broadening its overall domain. In fact, we have reached a phase in gaming history where the traditional boundaries between console generations no longer matter as much. Players jump between devices, use subscription services, stream games, and engage in cross-play with friends who might be on an entirely different setup. All the while, the concept of a static hardware cycle is changing before our eyes. So, where does this leave third-party publishers and developers? They are the real deciding factor in how long the PlayStation 4 remains relevant. If big studios keep releasing games optimized for older hardware, that is a sign that there is enough money to be made by catering to that massive audience. Plus, with so many engines allowing developers to tweak settings for different devices, the technical limitations are not as crippling as they once were. Sure, you cannot unleash the same epic next-gen visuals on the PlayStation 4 that you can on the PlayStation 5, but you can still offer a compelling gameplay experience to those who may not be as concerned about the latest graphical bells and whistles. As soon as the money dries up, or the cost of developing multi-generational games becomes unsustainable, that is when the older console's life cycle will actually meet its end. One might ask, will there come a day, let's say in 2024 or 2025, when Sony stands on a stage and declares that the PlayStation 4 is no longer part of its future roadmap? Quite possibly. But right now, courtesy of the latest announcements, that day remains distant enough that those holding on to the older console can breathe easy. And more than that, they can remain excited for upcoming titles still planning to land on their hardware. Gamers are continuing to speculate over when a brand new generation might be introduced. Some guess a few years down the line, some claim it might be further off because the pandemic impacted gaming hardware schedules across the globe. The truth for now is that Sony can afford to keep things fluid. Maybe the PlayStation 6 is in the conceptual pipeline, but that does not mean they want to alienate the mammoth user base that made the PlayStation 4 one of the most successful consoles of all time. Now, you might be wondering, is there a hidden cost for game developers who need to scale back their projects to run on older hardware? Absolutely. There are always trade-offs. But in our current gaming environment, overshadowed by rising budgets and intensifying competition, having more possible customers can be a financial lifeline. Look at any AAA release that aims to recoup massive development costs. Selling only to the newest generation might be too risky for certain studios, especially if not enough gamers have upgraded yet. The presence of a large, enthusiastic audience on the older console is a safety net. Then, once the desire for purely next-gen experiences grows too loud to ignore, studios will pivot more decisively. This is how the industry calibrates itself, and it is rarely a clean break from one console generation to the next. The irony is that this transitional period, which might feel prolonged to some, is actually quite thrilling from a technological perspective. We are seeing older machines push their limits with advanced game tech, while the newer devices demonstrate the apex of what is possible with ray tracing, lightning-fast data streaming, and more powerful hardware. Some cross-generation titles can show how far old hardware can be pushed, or give glimpses of what can be done when developers have the time and budget to optimize effectively. So for many fans, rather than complaining about the slower transition, they see it as a chance to enjoy the best of both worlds. Big new releases that run on the console they already own, plus glimpses of the truly next-level experiences available on the newest platforms. I can almost hear you saying, But what about the biggest groundbreaking exclusives that might appear only on the PlayStation 5, or even an upcoming generation? Indeed, that moment will come. And it might be the tidal wave that finally pushes straggling fans to upgrade. But until that wave hits, the official stance from Sony is that the PlayStation 4 is not riding away into the sunset yet. They are not only acknowledging that the older console is viable, they are championing it as a central part of their multi-generational strategy. Take a moment now, if you have not already, and consider subscribing or following along, because in the near future, we will see exactly how Sony keeps weaving older devices into their broader plan, and you will not want to miss the next wave of insights once unprecedented new announcements drop. Now, as we look to the rumored potential of a PlayStation 6, the real question is whether Sony will decide to take yet another bold approach and promise that it will be part of the same multi-generational environment. Will they dare to encourage owners of older consoles to remain in the PlayStation ecosystem for even longer? Or will the leaps in performance become so dramatic that developers simply cannot keep scaling games down to older machines? We have no crystal ball, but the evidence so far suggests that Sony wants an inclusive approach. They want to retain the broadest possible user base, unify them under shared services, and ensure brand loyalty remains robust. This is not the hit-and-run style of console generations from decades past. This is the era of a seamless digital library, cloud gaming expansions, and players who switch between devices the same way they switch between streaming services. Think of it as a grand orchestral performance. The PlayStation 4 is the older instrument that still has a magnificent tone, beloved by the audience and carefully maintained by the conductor, Sony. The PlayStation 5 is the shiny violin that can produce sharper, more resonant notes for those who crave the absolute best. And potentially, lurking backstage, is the rumored PlayStation 6, the next premier instrument being tuned up for a future masterpiece. But for now, the show proceeds with all instruments playing, each fulfilling its role in the grand performance. That is how Sony ensures that all seats remain filled, and that no single instrument is forced to leave the stage before its time. Yet we must remember, no matter how loud the cheering is, no generation lasts forever. At some point, the technical limitations of the PlayStation 4 will be too glaring. The developers will collectively decide that the next generation is the only route for pushing boundaries, and the pendulum will swing toward the new. But do not expect that moment to come with a whisper. If anything, it will happen once the ground is well prepared. That means once the supply of PlayStation 5s is abundant, once the user base of the newer console grows large enough to justify investment, and once a certain number of must-play exclusives appear. Until then, the PlayStation 4 remains a champion for the masses, proving that you do not need the latest hardware to experience remarkable adventures. As unconstrained as Sony might seem with this multi-generational approach, you can certainly see the bigger picture. The ecosystem thrives when millions of players are interlinked, discovering new titles, streaming demos, purchasing downloadable content, and interacting on social media about which platform is the best. The buzz itself becomes a marketing powerhouse, bridging the gap from older hardware to new. Sony has effectively found a method for using that synergy to keep everyone within their family of products. That is the magic formula that might carry them towards success, not just with the PlayStation 5, but with every generation to follow. Yes, the entire dynamic might change if a massive competitor emerges with a brand new strategy that completely disrupts how gaming is delivered. Perhaps cloud gaming leaps forward so drastically that hardware becomes less important. While that kind of revolution could happen, right now the gaming landscape still revolves heavily around these big console releases. The interplay of technology, exclusives, and brand loyalty has not dimmed. In fact, it seems more potent than ever. Everyone wants a piece of the console pie, but Sony has the advantage of decades of established credibility and some of the most beloved franchises in the world. So where do we stand at this very moment? The final takeaway is this. The PlayStation 4, born in 2013, is still being treated like a valued team member, even as the PlayStation 5 generation strides confidently onto center stage. Sony, in an unorthodox move for these modern high-tech times, is in no hurry to walk the older console off to an early retirement. Instead, they have endorsed it as an integral part of an evolving strategy that sees multiple generations coexisting in one grand ecosystem. If you are a PlayStation 4 owner, congratulations. Your console is still worth its weight in gaming gold, at least for now. That is the twist in the midst of a console arms race that typically scoffs at hardware older than a handful of years. While nobody can say for certain how many more intriguing twists will unfold in the next couple of years, we do know it will be a riveting ride, and that is the perfect place to bring our story full circle. We began with a question. Could the PlayStation 4 really defy the unstoppable tide of next-gen progress? Sony has answered with a resounding yes, seemingly determined to push boundaries that once seemed set in stone. They are giving you options, whether to stay with the comfortable older generation, jump headfirst into the sleek realm of the PlayStation 5, or even hold out for some future unveiling. Everyone is invited to the ongoing Sony extravaganza. Of course, the road does not end here. We will keep our eyes peeled for announcements at major events, developer showcases, and those subtle corporate briefings that can reveal the underlying financial logic. Who knows? Perhaps, by the time we officially say farewell to the PlayStation 4, the gaming industry itself will have changed beyond recognition, heralding new forms of interactivity that blur the lines between reality and the virtual realm. For now, we remain enthralled by everything the PlayStation 4 accomplished, and we eagerly watch for the next wave of experiences on the PlayStation 5. One thing is certain, the story of Sony's multi-generational success is not over, and there will be more head-turning developments on the horizon. This is only the beginning of the next chapter. Thank you for immersing yourself in this thrilling exploration. If you found this deep dive illuminating, let yourself be heard, whether that is through a quick comment, sharing with friends, or simply keeping the conversation alive among fellow gamers. The PlayStation family saga continues, and we will be right here, uncovering the unexpected twists and turns that make it all so compelling.